What is up, ladies and gents? Noli here. Welcome to another Payday video. Today we're taking a look at the Ghost skill tree. I'm hoping to finish off all the skill trees today, just doing a bit of an overview, and then I'm going to get into showing you how the new skills are working, and from then on, we're going to look at some really interesting builds, replicas of old builds, remade with the new update, and even some new ideas that have come about, thanks to some new skills added. So, starting things off, we have the Shinobi skill tree, which is your classic stealthing skill tree, and as ever, with a tree that's designed for one particular playstyle, basically every single skill in here is going to be worth picking up. And I'm going to go through why that is the case. Some are obviously better than others, starting with Chameleon. You're going to basic this one out, at least increase the time before you start getting detected by 25% while in casing mode, and you can mark enemies in casing mode. So this skill's actually been quite changed from what the original Chameleon used to do. If you ace this one out, you can pick up items while in casing mode, which doesn't have that many applications. I think probably the best mission this can be used for, maybe Big Bank, I suppose. It's not that great, but I found use for it on occasion. But the 30% more value to items and cash you pick up is pretty nice for a stealther, so I am going to actually ace this one out. Now we're going to take a look at Cleaner. So if we basic this, you get one additional body bag in your inventory and increases the body bag inventory space to 3 from 2. Now, acing this out might seem a bit pointless because most stealth builds involve bringing along an ECM jammer over the body bag. Now, you obviously want the option to bring a body bag along, but I think that option has been massively widened and increased by the fact, as I ace this one out, that Technician has Jack of all trades, so you can pick that up alongside it and bring both ECMs and the body bag deployable. So now obviously you gain the ability to place 2 body bags. Interesting thing about acing this out is you're not actually going to get any additional body bags, assuming you take it as a secondary, but you may want to bring 2 body bag cases, 1 ECM, so I am going to ace this out anyway. It's a difficult skill to explain why I pick it up, I'd say. Sixth Sense is a skill that, again, doesn't have a massive amount of application, but can be quite situationally decent. You gain the ability to automatically mark enemies within a 10-meter radius around you when standing still for 3.5 seconds. It's a nice idea. I loved it when it was added in the Fugitive skill tree. Tried it out, and it was never that powerful. But you're going to want to basic this out, if only because you gain access to all insider assets and reduce the cleaner cost of killing civilians, which, let's be honest, on some missions is pretty much essential, especially if you don't have that many people alongside you to cable tie all the civs. Next up we have Nimble. This is your standard lockpick. Now, the first skill's not all that useful. You gain the ability to disable one camera from detecting you and your crew. This effect lasts for 25 seconds, so compared to the old camera skills, it's quite interesting. You're properly disabling them now, but you can only do it to 1. I don't really understand. I don't know whether it means that you can do it infinitely, like you can do it as many times as you want, but only once per camera. But the suggestion really is, the way it's been worded, you can only do this once per mission. But because the effect lasts for 25 seconds, I can definitely see it being a little more worthwhile than the camera loop used to be. But again, there's another skill you're going to have to basic out if you want to pick up the ace, which is lockpicking 50% faster and being able to lockpick safes, which we always want to do in our stealth builds. Next up, we have ECM Overdrive. This is what they've done basically with the feedback skill. Again, this is another one you're going to ace out. Feedback, I believe, is something on ECM jammers now as standard. You don't have to go into a feedback skill, but this is going to extend the duration. However, the real use in stealth for ECMs, obviously you can use it to deal with pages and stop the guards from calling for backup, but also being able to open electronic doors has always been very useful, so you're going to want to ace this out. Unsurprisingly, we basically aced out every skill here so far, and that's not going to change because ECM Specialist allows you to bring 2 ECM jammers instead of 1. And finally, pages are now delayed by the ECM jammer. That's probably the most important thing. Plus, you get jammer duration by 25% and jammer feedback by 25%. So, there we go. Shinobi is fully aced out. Now, I'm not going to say ace out all these skills all the time. It's interesting, actually. I think feedback as a sort of combat skill has somewhat been nerfed. Because you're going to have to invest into an awful lot of stealth skills. You know, it can still work, you know, If your stealth mission goes wrong, you end up going loud. You still have ECM feedback there as a backup, which I guess is what it was always meant to be. But for a little while, I feel like silent killer builds could easily make use of ECM jammer feedback to make them that little bit more powerful, take it as your equipment of choice. So interestingly, the sort of combat impact of ECM feedback has, if you ask me, by the update been reduced, but overall probably a buff to the option because not many people were taking it anyway. Next up we have Artful Dodger. I'm a massive fan of dodge, and here's your dodge skill tree, but a proper one exists now instead of it being a bit janky. Duck and cover is, if you ask me, a skill that most builds are going to want to take up and make good use of. Stamina starts regenerating 25% earlier and 25% faster, and you sprint 25% faster. That's an awful lot for a single point. Furthermore, you have a 10% increased chance to dodge while sprinting, and you gain 15% chance to dodge while ziplining. For any sort of dodge build, you're going to be wearing relatively light armor, you'll be sprinting for an awful lot of the mission, and so this skill is worthwhile. Next up, we have Parkour. You gain a 10% additional movement speed and 20% increased speed while climbing ladders. And here, finally, much cheaper, you gain the ability to sprint in any direction. This skill was never that good. It was definitely not like, the 12 points you needed at the top of Ghost in order to pick it up. Now, this skill can be decent. It can allow you to basically backpedal sprint, which is actually an interesting mechanic. But, I don't know. I'm really torn as to whether I pick this up. I'd obviously get this for the additional movement speed. That's always nice and worthwhile. The climbing ladder speed's pretty inconsequential, if you ask me. To make that worthwhile, you really want to put that up to like 50% increase ladder climb speed. There are no ladders that are that long, really, where this would be that useful. But I guess that animation would look pretty ridiculous. So for now, I'm actually going to not pick up the ability to sprint in any direction. That's how bad I think that skill really was. You guys might be able to make some use of it, and in fact, it combines a little bit with something like duck and cover, giving you that dodge chance while sprinting, allowing you to do some sort of backpedal dodge sprint thing. I don't know. It's interesting, but I'm not going to go into it right now. Inner Pockets is going to give you that hidden weapon bonus, giving you increased melee concealment. If you're going to be running a dodge build, you're going to want this skill. Acing this out is going to increase your concealment for all ballistic vests by 4. Now, obviously, this skill is only useful if you're using one of the ballistic vest perk decks. I think there are 2 I can think of off the top of my head, and it's going to be useful because it's going to allow those ballistic vest setups to work more around dodge and around crit chance. And I do like this skill, but I'm not going to pick this up in the sort of everyman's build because it's a very specifically inclined skill. Next up, we have Dire Need, a really awesome skill, if you ask me. When your armor breaks, the first shot on every enemy will cause that enemy to stagger. As I said in yesterday's video, stagger is pretty damn awesome. Any way to interrupt and stun your enemies and stop them from dealing damage to you and allow you to deal damage to them in the place they are already stood is always going to be worthwhile. This effect ends when your armor regenerates. So this is an interesting skill because certain builds involve fast regeneration of armor. Certain more recently added builds, something like the Anarchist, and this skill won't work very well with that because you're never really out of armor. This is definitely going to be used on a pure dodge build or a health build using something like Grinder, for instance. But I do really like it, and if you choose to ace this out for an additional 6 points, it persists for 6 seconds after your armor has regenerated, making it a little more viable with those regeneration style of builds. I personally am going to pick this up. It's a new fun skill to mess around with, and as I said, making enemies stagger is pretty big. Here we have Shockproof, always been one of my favourite technician skills that I think has been overlooked for far too long. Tasers can cause certain builds real issues, and this is the counter to it. When tased, the shock effect has a 30% chance to backfire on the taser, knocking them back, which isn't that fantastic if you ask me, but if you ace this out when tased, you're able to free yourself from the taser by interacting with it within 2 seconds of getting tased. And I assume that's still going to have the knockback effect it always has. Again, this is more inclined for certain builds that struggles with tasers. I am actually going to leave it for now and just say that if you're looking for that sort of build, if you're running something like a light machine gun that doesn't do so well against tasers in close range, or even a sniper rifle that has some issues when you get tased in that sort of range and you can't deal with them, this sort of thing is a fantastic option for getting that shock effect off you, and it's quite nicely explained now as to exactly what it does. So Shockproof is still, it's still got my seal of approval, still one of my favourite skills, but it's not going to fit into every build. It's not necessary, I should say, for that 9-point investment. Next up, though, the famous Sneaky Bastard skill. It's been untouched. It's not been nerfed at all, I don't believe. So you're going to want to ace this out. It's going to give you that additional 10% concealment. Well, it's an interesting one actually. Depending on the build, you either want to basic or ace it out, depending on whether you can get that concealment to under 5. If you can do that, then you may as well just basic it out. But if you have to go over 5, up to 25 concealment, you got to ace this out to get the full use of the skill. It's a debatable one, it's 8 whole points invested. Can you try and drop that concealment down? Again, depends on the build, but I, for right now, will ace this baby out. If I need more points to show off the top skill, I will take a point out of it. Next up, we have Second Wind. I think that shows just how good the Ghost skill tree is. Alright, we know we have to invest completely in Shinobi. But yeah, you can clearly see that there are a lot of skills that require a lot of consideration. Silent Killer, I've always really liked this style of play as well. I've made a fair few Silent Killer builds in my time, and this skill right here is really interesting. It's, if you ask me, looking to combine with something like Dire Need based around armor breaking. So I think Silent Killer is designed to sort of synergize nicely with these dodge builds. Let's basic this out and see what it does. When your armor breaks, you get 30% increased movement speed. If you ace this out, the effect also applies to your crew when triggered. So this is another confusing overkill explanation. They've made so many explanations much better, but this one's just not quite there. I would assume, based on the way this is written, it suggests that they get a 30% movement speed for 5 seconds when your armor breaks. It may not be the case. It may be the case where they get movement speed when their armor breaks. Either way, I think this is a good skill. 30% movement speed is definitely not something to dismiss. I think it's actually very good, and movement speed is always undervalued in games. I think in many, many games, in first-person shooters, in MOBAs, movement speed is a fantastic skill that always needs to be considered, and I think Payday is no different. So I am going to ace this one out. Next up, we have a pretty ridiculous skill. We have Optical Illusions. You're 45% less likely to be targeted by enemies. That is ridiculous. If you combine this with the Ghost perk deck, I believe, is it Ghost? I can't remember. One of the perk decks has a similar skill that does something along the same lines. You can basically drop your chance to be targeted to a very minimal amount, and there's a reason for this. There's a serious reason for this, and I think this again synergizes really nicely with something like Dire Need, where, if your armor does go down, you're able to hide behind your teammates, basically. 45% is so unlikely. What this skill is really going to be good for, if you ask me, for someone like me who plays a lot with AI to get some weapon recordings, is if I just pop this on, the AI is going to get focused down, and I can basically look like a god, because they're never shooting at me. This is pretty ridiculous. Also, you gain 1 concealment for each silenced weapon you equip, and reduces the concealment penalty of silencers by 2. Interesting skill, again situational depending on the build, but I think this skill exists primarily to make use of Low Blow, which is exactly the same skill it used to be before Update 100, and Sneaky Bastard. Definitely a skill you want to consider acing out, I feel, but not for every build. It's not necessary to get the additional concealment depending on the weapons you choose to run, but I do like the way they've worded this and the way this skill works. It is, again, moving more towards that RPG title that Payday has and has never really fulfilled. Next up, we have, in the Silent Killer, we're going to pick up the Silent Killer skills, the classic Professional, giving you 8 weapon stability, nice and clear, and 100% snap to zoom, speed increase with all silenced weapons. Basic this out no matter what. Plus, you gain 12 weapon accuracy with silenced weapons. I'm going to ace this out. Not every build is going to want to. Not every build wants additional accuracy, needs additional accuracy. Those points could be better spent elsewhere. But for here, I will ace this one out. Specialized killing, pretty much another no-brainer. Additional damage with silenced weapons, up to 2 times 15%. basically ace that one out. Interesting that I swear it used to be penetration on one of these skills. There used to be a certain amount of penetration with silenced weapons, which was really important. I don't know where that's gone. It's not here, is it? No, it's not. Penetration's basically disappeared from the silenced weapons. I guess that makes some sense. I don't know why putting a silencer on a weapon would make it more penetrative to armor. But don't forget, in the technician skill tree, we still have body expertise and surefire, giving you that pure armor penetration you may want to pick up. Next up, we have low blow. Again, based on your low concealment, synergizes really nicely with sneaky bastard. In fact, they used to be side-by-side skills, but for some reason, this skill has been made cheaper. 9 points worth instead of 12 points worth, and crit chance is crazy. Crit chance is one of my favorite skills in the game, or abilities, I suppose, or buffs maybe might be the way to describe it. Crit chance is basically going to give you the headshot multiplier into the enemy with a random chance to do so, and in fact it stacks on top of the headshot multiplier, so you multiply something like this crit chance alongside body shots with body expertise. You're going to be doing some ridiculous damage, and I can't wait to bring that sort of build to you guys. So yeah, 30% crit chance if you choose to ace this out. Again, if you have low enough concealment and maybe you've combined it with something like optical illusions, this is a case where you'd be much better spending the 4 points on optical illusions to get your concealment down to 5 than spending the additional 6 points on low blow to allow you to have higher than 5, if you follow my drift. But for example, most builds won't be able to get down to that 5 concealment, and I think low blow ace out is a pretty sensible move, especially now it is 3 points cheaper than it used to be. Time for some more critical chance, and here we have Unseen Strike. We're going to ace this out. The synergy with this skill and other skills in the game is unbelievable. If you do not lose any armor or health for 4 seconds, you gain 35% critical hit chance for 6 seconds. So, if you ace this out, critical hit chance duration is increased to 18 seconds, so I definitely think that is worthwhile, tripling the time in which you have that 35% crit chance, plus the base value of 30, that's going to give you a 65% chance to crit for 18 seconds if you don't lose any armor or health for 4 seconds. Okay, so the idea behind this is it is the perfect dodge skill. With dodge, you have a greater chance to not be hit at all, so you've got all those skills aced on out, you're going to get hit an awful lot more seldom than if you're a sort of heavily armored tanky builder. Plus, with optical illusions, you're 45% less likely to be targeted. So, furthermore, you're even less likely to get shot, which means I reckon for maybe 70% of the heist, you're going to have 65% chance to crit. Now, if this skill isn't working out for you, you find you are getting hit once every 4 seconds, then you're going to have to get rid of it, because if it really isn't working, this skill's giving you nothing. But if you are able to dodge that damage, this skill is giving you a massive amount of damage potential for all your weapons. And I love this. I love the idea of combining something like the Silent Killer and Artful Dodger skill trees with the Engineer skill tree, allowing your sentry guns to do all the tanking, to be focused up constantly, while you go around the back and shoot people in the head with a silenced pistol. These builds are really already starting to form up in my mind, and I actually think these are some of the more creative ones. Ghost has come through yet again with some interesting skills that I really can't wait to show you guys. I've already tried them out, and I was not disappointed, let me tell you that. So, as you can tell, with me only having 3 points left over from just Ghost over here, these skills are fantastic. I think some of the most notable ones, Duck and Cover, for that price, it is a steal for everything that it's giving you. Optical illusions basic out, that skill seems ridiculous to me, and I can't wait to see the combination between optical illusions, unseen strike, and low blow, seeing us tearing through the enemies without them ever shooting at us. Ghost is probably my favourite skill tree so far. Technician's definitely up there as well. If you guys want to check out the previous video analysis on all these previous skill trees, Mastermind, Enforcer, and Technician, the links will be in the description down below. Hope you've enjoyed this video, guys, and I will see you later on, I hope, with the Fugitive build. I just want to get these, not build, I should say, overview. I want to get these out the way so I can get into doing the more interesting content and showing you how these things are working in-game. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.